Welcome to the first conversation about the Wisdom Project, Wisdom by Design, and the R.E.A.L method, R.E.A.L, the method that you can use to cultivate wisdom in your life, in your family, at work, and at your community. I'm going to start by introducing myself and my partners here in this video. I'm R.E.A.L Stammberger. I am a management consultant and cognitive psychologist, and also a mindfulness teacher of many years. I created the Wisdom Project as a strategy to help people solve challenging problems, to help people not be so overwhelmed with the crisis of the day, and to invite them to design a life, a personal life, a family life, an organizational life, a community life that responds to the current crisis of our culture one step at a time. Because at the Wisdom Project, I offer educational programs where people learn to use different tools to address one project at a time. Our motto is changing our world one project at a time, using the tools that they learn in our programs, that once they learn how to use them in one project, they can apply to many other projects. So this is me, and I'm going to introduce my partners in crime, my husband, Tomas, and my nephew, Daniel. They have been a few times participants in the various Wisdom Project programs. So, Thomas, can you do a quick introduction of yourself and then pass it to Daniel?
All right. My name is Thomas Stammberger, as Iris say. She's my spouse. I'm a senior director of business systems and performance at a staffing firm. So I'm an avid practitioner and also supporter of the Wisdom Project, and many of the tools that I've kind of learned here in this project, I actually employ them on a day-to-day basis at work and also for myself and my daily goings. With that, I'll pass it over to Danny.
Hey, I'm Dan, Iris's nephew. I am a developmental specialist at a company called NewPath for design of people with developmental disabilities. I'm a meditator, a Buddhist, and I'm a student of the Wisdom Project.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to present what is the Wisdom Project, what is the strategy that we follow, what is the framework that we use, and the method that we use. To invite you to embrace them or to come to one of our programs if that's something that appeals to you. I'm going to start by saying, why wisdom? Why the cultivation of wisdom? Why? Because today we are confronted with what is understood as wicked, W-I-C-K-E-D, wicked problems. What is a wicked problem? Remember the wicked witch? A wicked problem is a problem that you cannot solve like a traditional problem. I want to go from A to B, from my house to my office, and I know how every step that I need to take along the route. But when you are raising a child, for instance, you don't know exactly what to do next. That's a wicked problem. When you have a conflicting relationship, there are so many solutions. I want to create a better relationship with my mother-in-law. What is the way to go? That's a wicked problem. When we are overwhelmed by the loneliness, the isolation that permeates today contemporary culture, what is the real way to go? Should I register into a club? Should I redefine my career so I get more opportunities to meet people? Should I do that? Should I do that? And then if I do, what else would happen next? This is kind of a wicked problem. And wicked problems are all around us. How are we going to confront global climate change? how are you going to confront the polarization of political thought? But again, a wicked problem that is so huge, it's also a way of understanding a small wicked problem, like how am I going to have a better relationship with my mother-in-law or with my sister or with my nephew. So wicked problems don't have easy solutions. Wicked problems require that we continuously try one solution after the other. Wicked problems require that we try and then test and see if it's working so we can continue modifying our actions. It's about the process. And in that process, we require wisdom. That's the goal of the Wisdom Project. Designing interactions where people can develop solutions to their own wicked problems. And once they solve one particular wicked problem, like for instance, how do I create a better routine for my personal habits? I want to wake up early. I want to, do everything that I should be doing at work. I want to do this. Once I solve that wicked problem, because I designed the solution, and design is a very important concept at the Wisdom Project. That's what we called the strategy Wisdom by Design. Once I design that solution, then I have all the tools that I learned to use so I can use them again. So the Wisdom Project applies Wisdom by Design to create different programs, different solutions that people then apply to their own projects. One project at a time, changing your world. Once you solve one problem, then you can solve the next. You have any comments about this general framework, Daniel or Tomas?
Danny?
I think I don't know. I think everybody has those wicked problems, and facing them is an incredibly difficult task. So having tools to help you through it is, essential, and for any person, of course.
I mean, how do those tools kind of differ from, different self-help books that you find out there? Because, if I have a certain situation, I can just maybe go to Amazon and buy a book about something. I mean, how does the Wisdom Project kind of bring in those tools? How do they differ from something that I can probably just buy off the shelf?
Okay, you can buy off the shelf a book with psychological concepts, and some of those psychological concepts are part of what we offer at the Wisdom Project. You can buy a book with, let's say that you have a problem at work and you want your team to be more efficient. You can buy a book about a methodology in organizations that can help you motivate your team and make your team more productive. The difference is that we offer these tools as a combination so you can design one step after the other how to use them for your purpose, the project that you chose to work with when you join one of our programs.
So are you saying then that as you join the Wisdom Project, you will be working on a specific project?
Yes. So to start in any program, you have first to go through an interview with me. And in that interview, I will help you refine a project where you have clear goals that you can measure and that are visible to you, because then you're going to be using the tools that you are going to be learning to apply and see the results in your project. Let's say with my mother-in-law, this is a fictitious example because I have a good relationship with her, but with my mother-in-law, how do I measure my success? By the number of times that I speak with her and there is a good interaction. You see, I help people choose a project where they apply the tools and see the results.
Thank you.
Are any of the tools that you have learned by being a participant in the Wisdom Project help you solve a particular project of yours?
In my case, yeah, every day kind of seeing things from a different perspective and not immediately engaging or not trusting your initial judgment or thoughts that come to mind, because it may be tainted by a certain state that I may drive the wrong conclusion. So it allows me to kind of take distance from the situation and reevaluate what my initial thoughts were, challenge them, and then say, oh, wait a minute, but this is completely different from what I initially thought.
Okay. Daniel, you want to offer some comments, or can I keep going?
Just quickly, one of the things that helped me the most was, I don't think it was a tool, but more of the concept of, I suppose, aspiration, of understanding that the framework that I'm in is limited in a way. So trying to solve the framework using the inside view, usually just you end up somewhere else within the framework. So understanding the idea or the concept that there are things outside of that framework that you have to, then the word is escaping me.
Reformulate, reframe.
Imaginal. You have to use the imaginal in order to understand further, the further from your framework to escape from it. That definitely helped me a lot.
Okay, yeah. You two mentioned the topic that I was going to cover next, because it's wisdom by design. The Wisdom Project has a strategy called Wisdom by Design. And what is wisdom? What is that we are calling wisdom? Wisdom, according to the model that we use, has been defined as the ability to be humble, knowing that you don't know everything. Second, the ability to accept ambiguity, that even if you are able to know a lot, there will be certain things that you cannot grasp. And the wicked problems is the perfect teacher, because it teaches you that you don't know all that there is to know, and that you will never grasp everything that there is to know. Third, that there are multiple perspectives, that perhaps I see a problem one way and my mother-in-law sees another. And fourth, that to be wise is to be able to embrace those different perspectives and synthesize one answer. These four elements of wisdom have been proposed by a set of researchers in the area of wisdom under a paper written by Igor Grossman and 9 other researchers that got together in 2019, and in 2020 wrote a paper saying, okay, there are so many models of wisdom, but at least the 10 of us, we can agree that these 4 parameters are important. And they represented that with the image of an owl, the bird, which is considered a wise animal, and the ability to take these 4 elements, humility, acceptance of ambiguity of different opinions, and synthesizing them, was put in the head of the owl. And they call it perspectival metacognition, the ability to have different perspectives, Thomas, that you mentioned. And then in the body of the owl, they put in one side a moral commitment, because wisdom has to do with morality and embracing a moral posture. So the body of the owl is, half of it is about morality, moral commitment. And the other half is about personal experiences and the context in which you are acting. Because perhaps to be wise in one area is different than being wise in the other. So that's the type of wisdom that we try to cultivate. And Daniel, you said something about, can you refresh in my memory, what is that you said about your experience the last time you spoke?
Yeah, the imaginal, understanding that the framework that we live in is almost always limited, or it is for sure limited. So if you try to escape that framework, you can only use the tools that are available right in front of you, and those are the tools in your framework. So you're just going to get stuck in there. That's not obviously not for every problem, but it has happened to me. So using the imaginal, understanding or trying to create the image of something beyond that framework, and really focusing on it and trying to build around it, is, I think, essential in escaping the limiting frameworks that we live in.
Exactly, to be able to grasp for another perspective. So to that end, in the Wisdom Project, besides we have the strategy of wisdom by design, designing how to solve the problem, the wicked problem. We have the common model of wisdom that I mentioned. We also then, besides that, have a framework. And that framework is a framework proposed by a researcher called John Vervaeke, whom I greatly admire, that said that there are a few skills that you have to develop as a wise person. And one of them is to aspire to be wise. And when you aspire to be wise, you're aspiring to something that you really don't know because you are not wise yet. It's like I aspire to be a mom, but I'm not yet a mom. Therefore, I want something, but I have like an image. What Daniel said, the imagina is, I feel for it. It's really, really cherished for me, but I yet don't know what it is. So we are going to be using tools to follow Vervaeke's framework of the cultivation of wisdom and use aspiration as the first skill that we're going to try to develop to be like a sage, to be wise, to be a mom, like even though we still don't know what it to be a mom is, to be wise, to be sage, even though we don't know yet what to be wise is. To do that, so we have the Wisdom Project, the strategy of wisdom by design, the common model of wisdom that these 10 researchers created, and the framework that Vervaeke presented, of which aspiration is the first skill. But Daniel also mentioned tools. And we work with tools. We work with tools, as I said at the beginning, that help us reach the project. But then once we have the tool, like the tool of the imaginal, we can use it for the next project. Let me ask you too, have you used the tool of the imaginal besides for the original project that brought you to the Wisdom Project and applied it into another project?
I can't say I've used it in other projects because the project that I undertook during the Wisdom Project was, I'm still living it today. So, but however, I believe I incorporated that concept into my idea of the world. So that was like, it's pretty significant to understand that the things you believe are so limited. And, that just that belief in itself allows you to go further in whatever you're doing. So I would say that's a significant change in the way I see things. Yeah.
And in my case, as a practitioner, it gets up to a point that you internalize the tools and you really don't have to think about, now I'm going to use this tool or this technique or this practice. It's just whatever your situation is, if you internalize it, it just simply flows and you use it. So the answer to your question is yes. Many of the tools that are presented in the Wisdom Project, I've been able to internalize them. And depending on what I'm facing, what I'm encountering towards a specific goal that I want to achieve, those tools will automatically kick in.
Yeah, because I have been working, years ago, I didn't call it the cultivation of wisdom. Years ago, I called it the cultivation of change in an organization. I go to an organization and they have a challenge and I help them solve the problematic challenge. Because that's what I have done for many years. I have a bunch of tools from many areas, not only psychology and management science, but also from the study of mindfulness and wisdom. So I call myself the tool lady, and I get to an organization and they have a problem, and then I try to see what tools could they apply to solve their particular wicked problem. And so the idea behind the Wisdom Project is exactly that you get an arsenal of tools that you're going to use for the project, and then perhaps some people like one of the tools that are, the imaginal is one of the favorite tools, okay, because it helps with aspiration. But another tool that I see people using a lot is focusing, which is a technique developed by a psychologist called Eugene Gendling, that basically you do like a meditation and then you start clearing imaginal space of all the problems that impede a solution that you are looking for. And I have had participants in the Wisdom Project who have spent 3 months using daily the same tool, focusing. And one day, one of them called me and said, Iris, it's not working. And I said, I told you, use another one. But I like focusing. I said, okay, but it helped you for 3 months. Try another one. So he tried another tool. And then after 2 or 3 weeks, again, texted me, Iris, it's working again. I stopped, I did something else, and then I came back with a different challenge, with a different project, and I'm still using focusing.
Now, Iris, you talk about tools, and I can clearly understand that concept. Here's a toolbox, and I need to solve this problem, and I will use a particular or several tools in order to solve that situation or issue that I have at hand. Now, how does the concept of tools relate to, you mentioned the word technique, does it also relate to practices? Are they the same? Because some people may not identify with the word tool, but they may identify more with the word practice or the word technique. I mean, how do they relate to each other?
Okay. I have to develop a taxonomy, like a shelf, like the one that is behind you, to organize the different techniques, practices, concepts, methods, create like a taxonomy of the tools. The concept of tool that I'm using comes from a philosopher of mind, a cognitive scientist called Daniel Dennett, who says there are so many mind tools that we use to be who we are. A mind tool could be a pair of scissors, because with the scissors, I can do things that I cannot do by myself. A mind tool could be a knife, because it allows me to partition the world in a different way. But a mind tool is also a language that allows me to speak to you too. It's not my native language, but I learn it and I can communicate with others. A tool is anything that allows us to act beyond our biology in the world. And there are a few people who have proposed different names. For instance, John Vervicky, the professor at the University of Toronto who leads their cognitive science program, he uses the term psychotechnologies, technologies of the mind that can help us change. Meditation is one of those technologies, those psychotechnologies. Yoga is a psychotechnology. The imaginal tool is a psychotechnology. It allows you to visualize what you cannot. It's a fantasy, it's a visualization where you imagine, for instance, talking to a sage that can help you see your project differently, that can help you gain a different perspective on your project, reframe the way you approach your problem. So I don't have a clear separation between a technique, a practice, a meditation. I know. So I'm using anything that helps you go beyond where you could go with your current biology. So a baby that has not yet learned to talk doesn't have the technology of language. A baby, like my niece, Eleonora's daughter, who speaks answers in Spanish, French, and English, depending on who is talking to her, has these 3 language tools at her disposal. But because she's only 3, she doesn't have the tool of writing. She's acquired more or less the tool of numeracy. She can count. Her little brother is learning to walk. And I have a video where she's like, 1. No, in Spanish, she says, 1, 2, 3. So she's learning numeracy. So we continuously equip ourselves with tools, the tools of our culture, the tools of our family. So that's the idea of tool. Daniel Dennett calls them mind tools. Even a story that helps you see your family in a different light is a tool for understanding and learning and growth. Another cognitive scientist, his name is Andy Clark. Instead of mind tools, he calls them mindware. And I love that concept. mindware. Instead of hardware or software, is mindware. So that's how I see the tools of the Wisdom Project, of the Wisdom by Design. You are designing a life. You are designing a family. You are designing an organizational team. You are designing a community with the mindware that you are inviting to it. Could be the imaginal, could be any other tool that appeals to you, focusing that I just mentioned. It's just the wicked problem requires interaction, requires iterativity, requires trial and error, requires starting small and making things visible to correct your direction. And then each one of the people that are exposed to this way of approaching wicked problems will design their best toolkit for the moment, because perhaps in a while, Danielle would decide, and Thomas, you could decide, and anybody can decide to use another set of tools. Okay, so do you have any questions so far?
Iris, can you talk a little bit more about the characteristics or the traits of the Wisdom Project?
Do you mean the framework?
I mean, what characterizes a wicked problem within the Wisdom Project? I think that, yeah, some.
So what is a wicked problem? Okay. Well, this is not my definition. Many years ago, two researchers wrote a paper, and then it has become popularized in people who create policy, people who try to create solutions for educational challenges, for healthcare policy, etc. The idea of a wicked problem is, the characteristics are that it's very difficult to grasp it. If you have a loneliness problem, you know, somebody can say, but what? You work from 9 to 5, 5 days a week, and then you have this bunch of wonderful friends who invite you to parties all the time, in my opinion. And then you have 3 kids that are, you know, dependent on you. And so how come are you lonely? So to grasp the loneliness that this person is complaining about is difficult. So that's a characteristic of a wicked problem, to solve the loneliness challenge for this person. Another characteristic is that there is no stopping rule. You don't know when the problem is being solved. This person is going to say, okay, solved, because somebody could say, oh, perhaps you needed a partner, or perhaps you needed your partner to change, but has the problem completely disappeared? So wicked problems have that difficulty of formulation and difficulty of saying, okay, that's it, it has been solved. Many times, there is no way to test the solution. How do you test the solution to a loneliness problem? How do you test the solution to climate change? How do you test the solution to depression? There is no way to do a test, to run a test and see if the solution works or not. All wicked problems are unique. The loneliness that this person is feeling is unique when compared to the loneliness of another person. We call them loneliness, but they are different phenomena. That's another characteristic.
Now, Iris, if I may, I mean, you talk about loneliness, so I'm hearing that there's a component of emotionality, or the emotions, that you need to address or consider. Is that correct?
Well, depending on the wicked problems, emotionality is always involved, and the way of, okay, so I don't know if this answers your question, but we have this idea of emotionality as something separate from the mind. We have this idea of the intellect and the emotions are separate, or the mind and the body is separate. And the view that is emerging in the sciences of the mind is that this is not a good appreciation of the problem, that emotions and the body are always involved because the mind is embodied. The mind is something that we cultivate as we grow. The idea of language being a tool is because we have embodied the tool, it's part of us. So emotionality is always involved. And in this view, it's not my view, it's the view that is taking prevalence in the science of the mind right now. There is no separation. So I could say everything brings emotions with it. If we are talking about a wicked problem defined as loneliness, or we are talking about a wicked problem defined as polarization of political views, or if we are talking about diverse understanding of strategies to address or not address climate change, emotions are always involved. And that's why among the tools that I present in the Wisdom Project, I present some tools to address what I call the emotional landscape. To design, part of the design is to design your emotional landscape. So we worked with the embodiment of the emotion of joy, the embodiment of the emotion of wonder, the embodiment of the emotion of contentment, joy, reverence, etc., etc. Can you remember, as participants in the Wisdom Project Fundamental Program, any of those emotional landscaping experiences? And if not, that's okay. Yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to share? No, okay, so I shared yesterday.
Okay.
Yesterday, I was leading a 90 minutes workshop to promote the upcoming Wisdom Project courses. And I led an exercise of emotional landscaping where we visited all, the discovery, like a little toddler discovering the mountain or the ocean, the surprise, the wonderment. Then we emoted, we visited, we invoked the emotion of joy and contentment. And then I invited the participants in the workshop to invoke any emotion of their preference. And some people brought reverence, some people brought gratitude, some people brought a variety of emotions. And that generated in me a state of mind that even though the workshop ended around 1 p.m., still at 7 p.m., I was still in that expanded emotional state of the exercise. So emotions, yes, are very important in the Wisdom Project. They are very important in the approach, interactive and interactive approach to solving wicked problems. Daniel, you want to add something?
I just remember my experience of not all but wonder, which is a close one. But in my first Wisdom Project, the conversations we had about wonder is just, that was definitely the one that I remembered most clearly, and held most dearly, I'd say, because just the experience of sharing the different perspectives of what wonder meant to us, and using like analogies and descriptions to try to capture that feeling and reciprocating back the different ideas we had. We built off each other and then coming back together as a whole group. It was really awesome. That was one of my favorite moments for sure.
And in my case, it was the unconditional love. Not so much to talk about how do you experience, how do you feel unconditional love? It was very, very powerful.
The love of a parent for a child, the love of the puppy for the owner, the love of Daniel, that you were enjoying the company of this beautiful dog, Louis, yesterday, and you sent me a picture of the dog licking your face. That was a picture of love going in both directions.
It was.
Yeah, exactly. So, yes, Thomas, thank you for bringing the emotionality to the cultivation of solutions for the wicked problems. And when Daniel shared how important it was to bring to the community of participants the experience of wonder, is because the whole process is dialogical. It's a dialogue. There are many ways of doing dialogue. Since Socrates, dialogue has become a door to insight and discovery. And we use a particular type of dialogue in the Wisdom Project, inspired by a woman called Tanya Singer, who works at the Planck Institute in Germany. And she is an affective neuroscientist, and she has developed a method of dialogue that really generates a lot of empathy and a lot of intimacy. And we use it with certain modifications in the Wisdom Project, and we call it the mindful conversation. So people have the experience to connect with others after having this cultivation of a particular emotion or a particular imaginal experience. So what happens with wicked problems is that when we start working with them, we discover other problems beneath it. So that's what makes it dialogical. We cannot just say, oh, okay, I made a diagnosis, like we do in engineering. I used to be an engineer. You have a problem from A to B, and you create the steps, and then you know where to go. Wicked problems are not like that. You have to dance around them, discover new angles, new ways. It makes you humble. It allows you to accept ambiguity because there is no final solution. It invites you to see different perspectives, and it allows you to integrate them because you need to solve your project. And those things that wicked problems allow you to do are the things that are required to cultivate the wisdom model that I mentioned at the beginning, with the 4 abilities: humility, ability to accept ambiguity, ability to honor different perspectives, and finally integrating them in only one.
But is that the framework that is the basis of the Wisdom Project, or?
Well, the way I have organized them is as follows. The Wisdom Project follows a design strategy, wisdom by design. It follows that wisdom by design strategy is applied through a framework that uses the common model of wisdom that I just mentioned, and the particular skills that John Vervaeke has identified in his work: aspiration, mindfulness, open-mindedness, self-regulation, intuition, understanding, and transcendence. We start aspiring to be wise. Then we develop the skills of mindfulness with a particular set of tools. Then we also focus on generating an open mind, because how are we going to change the way we see the wicked problem if we don't have an open mind? And then we work with self-regulation, the ability to invoke different emotions, to do what I call emotional landscaping, and self-regulate our behaviors as we plow our way towards the solution of our wicked problems that we have chosen to use as a guide for the whole experience of the Wisdom Project. We cultivate understanding with a different set of tools, and intuition with another group of tools, and finally, transcendence, transformation, the decision to go from where I am right now, to another state of being. Those are the 7 skills that we cultivate in the Wisdom Project. Why? Because we want to solve the wicked problem, the wicked project that we have chosen as a guide to see if we are making progress through the process of pursuing wisdom by design. So another concept that I want to introduce is the idea of design. Why wisdom by design? Well, because the problem is wicked. There is no other way to solve it but through interactions, through interactions with the problem and in an iterative way. And that's the way of design. How do we design something? In our culture, we have this idea that design is what an architect does. You design the building and then forget about it. Or what a graphic designer does, they design something and then it gets replicated 100 times. But design is more than that. Design is what an engineer does. An engineer not necessarily has a clear solution to a problem. He has to make many different interactions until finally developing a powerful technology like the smartphone. Steve Jobs didn't come out with this, and Apple didn't come out with a smartphone out of the blue. Many interactions. So technology changes through design. And that's the concept of design that we invoke in the Wisdom Project. Design is what Leonardo da Vinci did when trying to create a flying machine. Art was what he did when he painted the Mona Lisa. And science was what he did when he tried to describe the human anatomy. So Leonardo da Vinci was a scientist because he pursued the truth, was an artist because he pursued beauty, painting the Mona Lisa, but he was also a designer because he pursued the good of design that would allow his machine. Didn't do it because that was 500 years ago and Leonardo was ahead of his time, but he was designing something to fly, the good of flight, you see? So here, what is the good that we are pursuing? The good of manifesting my project in life, the good of creating, if that's the project you chose, the life that I want to create. A pastor who came to the Wisdom Project with 4 kids and 80 families in her parish. For her, the design that she wanted to create was some space for herself. So after she finished her program, from time to time, she sends me pictures of the river that is close to the place where she lives. She wakes up very early and walks to the river and meditates and prays there, and then sends me a picture to show me that she's still following with her project. So that's the goodness that we pursue with design. Design has a property of being local. I cannot design a Christmas meal that is going to serve and be helpful to all the families in my neighborhood. I only design and create the meal that is local and real for my family. The same when we prepare dinner together, is we design things that are local and real, that are particular. If I'm educating a baby, a toddler, a child, and I have to tell him or her, say thanks. And I remember your mom, Danielle, when you were little, 1 and twice and 3 times, and then 1,000 times. Say thanks, Danielle. Say thanks, Danielle. Say thanks, Danielle. Danielle, in a loving, caring, supportive way, you were being designed as a member of our civilized society. And the same, Danielle, I think you do with Louis. No, Louis, don't lick my face. Don't lick.
Yes.
Until one day, the dog called Louis is going to say, okay, I shouldn't approach Daniel and lick his face because he doesn't like it. Or my son's cat, he already knows Mr. Floyd. He already knew I'm not a candidate to jump into my lap because I don't have that type of relationship with a cat. So we are designing interactions. We are designing what is good in the particular situation. And so that's the important concept of the Wisdom Project. Wisdom by design is allowing you in this interactive, interactional dialogue with yourself and with others to create the good for the project. And what happens in the process? That you are transformed, that you deliver your project, that you enter into what is called a liminal area. You know, there is this image in mythology, in Roman mythology, they had a god called Janus that was represented having two faces. One face, and they used to put it on top of doors. So one face was looking to the person entering into the door, and the other was looking into the other area. Those are liminal spaces, spaces of transformation and transition. We use the Wisdom Project, we use Wisdom by Design to enter into a liminal phase, to go from where we are to where we want to be. Where do we want to be? With our project, our wicked project achieved, or at least certain manifestation of that we are in the right direction. And in the process, I repeat, we learn many tools that then we can use for many other projects in our lives, transforming our personal life, our family life, our organizational life, and our community life. Do you have any other there are many other characteristics of wickedness, but I think I have mentioned some of them already. I think also, yeah, go ahead, Daniel.
I was just going to ask about Veriviki's framework, because you said that was essential or it was integral into the Wisdom projects. I thought maybe you want to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, exactly. The Fundamentals program, the Wisdom Project Fundamental Program is 7 weeks, 2 hours every session online, at least the first program, the Fundamentals. And every week we cover one of the 7 skills. The first skill is aspiration, to aspire to be a sage, to aspire to wisdom. And we invoke the presence of Solomon, the King Solomon, and then of Socrates, and then of Jesus and Buddha as exemplars of what a wise person can be. And then we practice with tools to achieve that aspiration. The second week is about mindfulness, and then I introduce some mindfulness tools. The third week is about open-mindedness. So we introduce some tools to open our minds and escape cognitive rigidity. This is the way I think, we become impervious to facts. We have what Greg Enriquez, the psychologist, he's a psychotherapist and a theoretician. He calls the justification system, that we live inside this justification system. It doesn't matter how many facts come into you, your system doesn't allow to see that. So we cultivate tools for open-mindedness, and we cultivate tools for self-regulation, to be able to invoke different emotions, not let them be possessed by them, to understand that what we have is basic moods, an energized or a depressed mood, an expansive or a contracted mood, and that many of the emotions that we experience are culturally based. And then I introduce some tools based on the work of Lisa Barrett-Feldman, the neuroscientist, affective neuroscientist from Northeastern University, to help people expand on the tools. And when we covered, that's when we covered self-regulation, when we covered intuition, we introduced the idea that intuitions are to be trusted only if we try them, only if we test them. And then I share the parable of these two cognitive scientists fighting with each other. One that says, yes, intuitions, you have to respect intuitions, because for 30 years he has researched firefighters and nurses and people in emergency rooms, and he knows that intuitions lead action before people are able to reason, why am I doing this or that? And then I invented a fictitious, they met. Daniel Kahneman is a Nobel Prize winning psychologist who said, no, what intuition? We only have cognitive biases. And he created this list of cognitive biases that do not allow us to see reality. Do not trust your intuitions because you have so many biases. That's Kahneman. And the other guy is called Gary Klein, and he's, no, let's respect intuition. So after many years of going back and forth, they decided to get together. They sat, they worked, and they wrote a paper called Agreeing to Disagree. Because even though they kept their positions, at least they were able to agree that if we test them, the intuitions, then we can start trusting them. So we use some tools to learn how to trust the intuitions. And we do the same with other tools, with the sixth skill, which is understanding, and then with the final skill, which is transformation, we do some other tools.
Iris, at the beginning, you mentioned something about R.E.A.L. Can you kind of talk about that?
All right. Okay. Yes. What I do, the way I do it, is a way that I discovered through many years of practice. I have been doing it for decades. And now I call it the R.E.A.L method. R.E.A.L, the R.E.A.L method. In this case, it's the R.E.A.L method for the development of wisdom, for the cultivation of wisdom. But a few hours ago, I sent an email and asked a wonderful person I just met who is researching happiness. I said, do you think you could use the R.E.A.L method for the cultivation of happiness, which is her current research topic? And I think that it applies. And what is the R.E.A.L method? The R.E.A.L method means R for ritual, E for engagement, A for artificiality, and L for liminality. I already said liminality is moving through that door into something that I still don't know what it is. I want to be a mom, I want to be a sage, but I don't know yet what is to be a mom or a sage. Liminality. Artificiality is all these artificial things that we have created, all these tools that we incorporate in who we are. And ritual is something that we do all the time. So the R.E.A.L method is ritual engagement with the artificial in pursuit of liminality. Ritual engagement with tools, with the artificial in pursuit of liminality, change. And why ritual? Because something that we do all the time, but we do it mindlessly is rituals. We wake up, we go to the bathroom, we pee, we flush the toilet, then we brush our teeth, take a shower. That's a routine. And then prepare coffee. But if we do it with intentionality, paying attention mindfully, we can transform the routine into a ritual. And when we do the routine, we engage the artificial. We engage the toilet, the flushing it, the toothbrush, the toothpaste. There are so many artifacts, so many things that are man-made in our lives. The coffee pot, the coffee that we didn't grow. Perhaps we grind it, but we didn't grow the coffee plant. So everything in our lives is built around routines that use the artificial. And the invitation of the Wisdom by Design strategy is you can transform those routines into rituals. Rituals have been present in humanity since the beginning of times, and we have put them aside and we only use them in religious ceremonies. But every time we get together, Danielle and Tom, when we get together and practice this particular type of dialogue after having cooked a meal, that's our ritual. When you stand next to me with your notebook writing the recipe, it has become our ritual. Then after dinner, we sat, the three of us together, and engaged in another tool that we practice, the Tanya Singer tool that I mentioned a while ago, mindful conversation that allows us to have insights about different issues in our lives. That's our ritual. Ritual engagement with the artificial. What artificial? The method that Tanya Singer invented. Why? Because we are pursuing the liminal. We are pursuing something that we don't know yet what it is.
Thanks, Iris. And again, can you tell us a bit more real quick about when are the next courses, when they're happening? How can people sign up for them?
Okay, I want to close by saying that there is a lot of research on how to do design inquiry. There is a lot of research on how to do scientific inquiry. There is a lot of research on how to do art inquiry, how to explore art and create beauty. There is a lot on design, but not as much as we should. We do art. We do artifacts and never think, at least we do not think as much as we should or could about our ability as humans to make things in the world. So I keep saying, instead of Homo sapiens, we should be called Homo Faber, F-A-B-E-R, the human that builds, that creates, because that's what we are. And that's the invitation of the Wisdom Project. Let's do things. Let's design new things, like the potter creating with clay. That's what we do with our lives, with our families, with everything. How? With the real method. Ritual engagement with the artificial, with artificiality, in pursuit of the liminal, in pursuit of transformation. So one little thing before I present the upcoming workshops is that it's always local. Is because the wicked problem cannot be solved in the universal. I cannot raise all the babies of humanity. I cannot create a method to raise all the babies. I just can practice and experience raising my baby, cooking my meal, tending to my family. You see, design is local. So start small and make things visible. Those are the two principles that I'm going to share today. There are more, but start small, choose something that you can see results, and then look for ways that the interactivity and the interaction fits you so you can continue the dynamic of trying to solve the particular challenge that you have solved. So, yeah, you asked me for the upcoming cohorts. Usually I like to start them at the end of the month, the last week of the month. And they are always at 7 a.m., 11 a.m., or 7 p.m. on Fridays and Saturdays, Easter time, because we are in the Boston area. So at the end of next month, we will be starting a new series of cohorts. So they can just click on the link below or email me, and then we'll be going.
So do you have to do an interview with you first? Did I hear you say that?
Yes, I like to have a half-an-hour interview. It's free of charge. So people get to know that they need to choose a project, and I help them shape that project. I've had many years using what I now call the R.E.A.L method to help people frame their wicked problem that is difficult to frame, but to formulate it the best way we can so they can track their progress. So there is a half-an-hour interview, then there are 7 sessions, 2 hours each, 1 week after the other, and then in the middle of the week, people can choose the day. They have to meet for a dialogical exercise around the topics of the week with a classmate, which, as Danielle said, brings a lot of insight on how people can process and experience differently. So you want to add something, Danielle and Tom, before we close?
I was just thinking, because you mentioned that climate change and political polarity were wicked projects or wicked problems. If the design has to be local, how could we even make it, how could we do anything about these wicked problems if we wanted to do something? Since, the Wisdom Project is all about personal things, obviously it's not part of the Wisdom Project, but I'm just out of my own curiosity, how could we face a wicked problem that is, on a scale of much greater than us, that we can only put just a dent in it? What's the idea there?
Okay, start small, test quickly, make results visible. What can you do about, for instance, climate change, that it's starting small, testing quickly, and have results, a strategy change as you see your results. One is to approve, to make sustainability measures in your own town. Or you can start in your house. You start in your house, you learn from that, then you do it in your neighborhood, then you do it in your community, et cetera, et cetera. Like the independent mind that permeates American culture allows for that to work. I remember the first time that I learned that in Cambridge, they had forbidden to smoke in public places. And I thought, oh. And then less than a year later, in my town, in many other towns, and less than a few years later, it's almost impossible to smoke in a public place. I remember when in San Francisco, they approved gay marriage, and then it grew. That's a wicked problem that has been adopted, starting locally and seeing results locally. I remember when in Colorado, the Colorado state approved the recreational use of marijuana. You see, that's by design, and every time they do it, they learn something. So it's the beauty. I really admire many good things of being an American and living in America. And when I drive to visit my son, sometimes I tell Thomas, let's take the little roadways. Let's not use the highway, because I can see so many emerging little businesses, little things happening, a burgeoning of opportunities. People start small, produce results, and whatever they learn, they replicate. And if they don't replicate it, other people learn from them. And this is the beauty of the American spirit in my... America is at its best wisdom by design. I honestly believe it. So I trust that we're going to solve many of our wicked challenges of the day. I am not afraid totally of AI, because I trust that by design, we're going to gain the wisdom necessary to live with this new artificiality. Thank you very much. And I'll see you again in 2 weeks for another session of Wisdom by Design.